Hi, thank you for joining me. I'm going to talk a bit about belief versus reality when it comes to mental illness. Often people get very scared when they get a diagnosis of mental illness because they wonder what their life is going to be like, and their perception of what it means is different to what it actually means. They think it's going to put a lot of limitations on them, that they won't be able to do the same things as other people and be independent. And then there's the whole what will people think? They fear becoming a social outcast because people are afraid of mental illness when most of the time they have no reason to be. Even now, people still think of all mental health patients as being spaced out, drugged up to the eyeballs, wandering around in pajamas, wailing, banging their head against the wall. Such a stereotype. The media has a lot to answer for. They don't see the things that we do and that we create. It expands your mind, that's for sure. There are many very successful writers who have suffered from mental illness. J.K. Rowling, Stephen King, Mark Twain, to name just a few. You would be surprised at the number of celebrities who are members of the mental illness club. Hopefully, if people realise that, it will help to make it more acceptable and raise awareness, which is great. But on the other hand, when celebrities have something, people can start to see it as the thing to have. It's not a fashion accessory. There are a lot of common beliefs about it that are completely different to the reality, which I'm going to try and dispel. First, it's not anything unusual. Lots of people get it. Mental illness doesn't equal being incarcerated. It doesn't automatically mean being sectioned or being on a psychiatric ward. I never went into hospital. They try to treat people at home. People are only sectioned if they're a danger to themselves, even in that situation, which is probably one of the most feared. It's not as terrible as people think it is. Being sectioned doesn't mean locked up forever. You're only kept there until you're well enough to go home. And you're not put in a straitjacket or anything like that. Those things are just in movies. But images of Victorian mental institutions are still there in people's minds. It's not always visible on the outside. You can't always tell by looking at someone if they're mentally ill. You can be talking to someone and not know it. Mental illness doesn't mean you're incoherent and don't know what day it is. Mental illness is a very broad term. There are a lot of things that fall under that umbrella. It's not just one condition. There are many different ones. It ranges from mild anxiety to full-blown psychosis. Mental illness doesn't equal violence. We're more likely to be victims of violence than perpetrators. People with mental illness are over 10 times more likely to be victims of violent crime than the general population. You usually only hear about cases where people are violent, but they're a very small percentage. It's much more common for people to become violent when they're drunk or high on drugs. Mental illness doesn't mean you can't work, travel, or do anything else that you want to do. It's just another thing that people live with, like diabetes. I think of some of the films I've watched and I feel quite horrified because they're making a joke out of something that causes great suffering. We're not objects to be used for entertainment. We're human beings who are dealing with something very difficult. You have to learn how to manage it. You might have to make some adjustments, but you're not going to spend the rest of your days rocking back and forth in a chair. That's just not going to happen. If it's not treated, it will run wild. But if it is treated, it will be manageable and under control. You move forward, you get on with the rest of your life, and you do the same things as everyone else. One thing I learnt from my own awful experience was take your meds. You can thrive with mental illness if you do the right things. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you for watching. See you next time.